right. Joining us on the line right now is a four-time former AWA Southern Tag Team Champion, a former AWA World Tag Team Champion. He is a member of the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame and one of the original members of the Midnight Express. He is ravishing. He is Mr. Randy Rose. Randy, welcome to the two-man power trip of wrestling.
Hey, thank you, man. I appreciate it very much.
Now, there is obviously, all this craziness going on in the world, but what have you been up to? What has Randy Rose kind of been doing? I know you were a part of the Hall of Fame last year, but you've been kind of laying low, doing signings here and there, but what have you been up to?
Yeah, not much on the wrestling front because all this, like you said, all this junk going on, coronavirus and all kinds of different stuff going on. We got a crazy world out there, don't we?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we've done a few signings there. I did Charlotte last August or so, and we had just about every one of us up there, from Cornette to Bobby Eaton to Dennis Condrey, my old partner, and Stan Lane. We were all up there together, and we did a pretty good deal up there. It was pretty nice.
Yeah, the old gathering. Very cool to kind of get you guys all together. Is that a rarity, kind of get you guys all together and at a signing?
Yeah, that was pretty rare. I think it was T. Mart D'Amato or something that does it out of New York.
Yep, Marty, yep.
Yeah, Marty. He set it up, and I thought he does a really great job with those things up there. And we had a big crowd. We sat there proud. Me and Dennis sat at one table, and then Stan and Bobby sat at the other table. And I bet we signed autographs for probably 2.5 hours straight and never got up from the table.
That's awesome. See, the old school fans, they love you guys, and they love the old Midnight Express, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, as far as the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, the original, Midnight Express gets put in that last year, that's a pretty great honor too, right?
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised there. The year right before, I think I heard the wife and I were on vacation down in Daytona, and on the way back on Thanksgiving, which was pretty cool, I had an old friend of mine, Pat Rose, used to wrestle with us down in the southeastern area. He called me up.
Yep.
He calls me up and says, "Are you sitting down?" And I said, "Well, I'm driving back to Atlanta, so I guess I'm sitting down." I said, "Why?" And he says, "Well, you need to pull over." And I says, "What is it?" And I thought, in the wrestling world, you never know. I mean, some of the guys are getting older and all. I'm like, oh, no, somebody has passed. So I pull over, and he says, "I just heard the news. It's not been broadcast yet, but you, Dennis, and Bobby are going to be put into the real professional wrestling Hall of Fame in Texas." So Johnny Mantell and all those people out there that run that thing, it's a great operation, and it was such an honor. I mean, they flew us out to Texas, Wichita Falls, me and the wife, and put us up in the hotel, gave us a nice big honor dinner, a nice cowboy hat with your name engraved in it, and a really nice cool ring. And what I understand and what I found out, that you are voted into that one by your peers and a lot of people that you work with and some of the historians out there. And it is just anybody that's listening that has never been to that Hall of Fame. It was the original one that was up in New York, and they just moved it out to Texas. But if you've never been to that one, it is worth the trip because, I mean, my goodness, it goes back to probably the 20s and 30s. And there's so much, 3 stories of nothing but professional wrestling in that Hall of Fame. One of the only ones I understand as a brick and mortar building at the time. I mean, you've heard about WWE Hall of Fame and all that.
Mm-hmm.
There's really no building. So, as Scott Steiner says, it ain't no Hall of Fame.
Yeah, if you don't have the physical building, how could you say it's a Hall of Fame, right?
Correct. Yep. But like I said, it was an honor. I mean, it really was, and they really done us good. And I never would have expected it. And one of the better things that's happened in my career, in probably 15 years of my career. But it was pretty cool.
As far as the original Midnight Express and kind of getting together, not as far as 2019, I'm talking about in the 1980s, getting together and forming the group. where did you guys form? Like, where did that kind of team come from? Was it Southeast Championship Wrestling? Where did you guys kind of all come together?
Yeah, it was. As a matter of fact, Ron Fuller was one of the ones that put it together. That was the owner and promoter of Southeastern Wrestling out of Alabama and Pensacola. We were stationed in Pensacola, but we went all through Alabama and Pensacola. And I went there probably about 1980 and part of 81. And got to doing pretty good and down there. And Ron Fuller came to me and said, and I'm not bragging in any way, so I hope this don't sound braggadocious or whatever, but I got to where I was doing pretty good there, and like in second matches and stuff. And he said, I'm going to move you up to semi-mains and main events. He said, but I got a partner for you. I'm going to bring him down from Georgia. His name is Dennis Condrey. So we had the long blonde hair, and, we got over pretty strong as the heels. And with all the other partners I had there, probably, and there again, I'm not bragging. I'm just telling the facts. Won the Southeastern Tag Championships with them down there, different partners, probably 13 times. And then he put us together, and then we got over stronger then. And when he stuck us together with Norvell Austin, the three-man team, sort of like the Freebirds, and we called it the Midnight Express, and that got over really strong. So after that, we went on to Memphis for a while with Jerry Lawler, Bill Dundee, and all that, and it just kept getting stronger and stronger and stronger, and the people really got with it, which was pretty cool.
Absolutely. What did you kind of think of the chemistry with Dennis? You guys seem to be meshed well together right away, right?
Yes, absolutely. As a matter of fact, they called us cousins down there because we kind of looked alike and had the long blonde hair. And we were hanging out on the beach, had a couple of condos on the beach, and we thought we were really cool. So we got over pretty strong together, and we gelled really good in the ring. And that's the main thing, is you can always, if you have a partner, like that you can really, really work with, I mean, there's things that we could do in the ring without even telling each other or talking or anything. It's just our eye contact. We would know what was going to do or what we wanted each other to do. And it came out pretty good. And we got along pretty good in the ring, and everything else. It really came out pretty good as far as the team goes.
How does that kind of happen? I mean, just the promoter, not that they're psychic or anything, but how can they tell, like, okay, these guys are going to work really well together? You know what I mean? Like, sometimes, like you said, you had some other partners maybe didn't mesh as well, but you and Dennis seem to really have great chemistry. How does that kind of just happen?
Oh, yeah, I don't know. It's let's see if there's some of the ones I can name. Let's see, I was down there in that area. Like I said, he stuck me with about, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 different partners, and I always try to do my best with any partner they put us with. And let's see, one of them would have been Norvell Austin, and there was Ron Bass, and there was Ron Starr, and then there was quite a few. And then when me and Dennis got together, we automatically just gelled pretty good, and everything turned out pretty good as far as the tag team division. And then I found out that, all these other times before, I had done other stuff, like went to Japan a few times and single matches and all that. And I kind of found out after they put me and Dennis together that, I was more or less, I liked it better, and I got over stronger as a tag team wrestler. And, more or less when you got 4 guys in there giving you all the action, it's just a lot better.
You prefer then tag team wrestling over singles for sure?
Yes, absolutely.
There's always that kind of thing where it's like, oh, well, what about tag teams? But it's harder to have a good match for a tag team, right? 'Cause 4 guys have to be gelling well together, and if you can kind of master that craft, I mean, it's just one of those things of beauty in professional wrestling.
Right, very true, very true. Easier for 4 guys, if they gel together, to get over stronger than it is for just the 2,
Absolutely. And you were tag team partners with Jimmy Golden as well down there in ECW. Yep.
That was one of the names I was trying to remember.
And the gimmick, the Midnight Express, where does that name come from? I mean, obviously there was the famous movie at the time, but is that where you guys basically get the name from?
Yes, as a matter of fact, Ron Fuller was the one that came up with it, and he gets all the credit for that. And as a matter of fact, I seen him in Charlotte at the gathering there, and I told him, you know, I really appreciate everything you've done for my career and pushing us forward into that and to that day, and especially being honored by the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame in Texas out there, you know, as the original Midnight Express and the Midnight Express together. I said, I just let him know that I appreciated everything that he's done.
You know what's crazy about Ron Fuller? You know that he's tall, but you didn't realize he's that tall. I mean, he's like 6'10". He could barely fit in that room in Charlotte, especially with his cowboy hat on. I mean, he could barely, not hit his head when he was walking through, right? He's a huge, huge guy.
Very tall guy. Very long arms. I used to tell him, as a matter of fact, in the ring, this is a pretty little funny, I'll tell you a story. In the ring, we had a couple of guys. Let's see. In the ring, when you got in the ring with him, his arms were so long, he would swing that punch, and that punch would slap around the back of my neck and hit me right on that back of that bone of that neck. So I'd kind of make fun with him sometimes before I'd get in the ring with him, and I'd say, Ron, I'd rather you just hit me square in the nose because that freaking punch hurts worse when it hits the back of my neck. There was him, and then there was the Armstrongs. I guess we were married to the Armstrongs for years, you know. We helped train Brad in the ring. It's like a OJT, on-the-job training with Brad Armstrong. He turned out to be one of the best in the country, I believe, you know, underrated. And then there was Bob, bless his heart. He was great, too, but he couldn't. He had the eyes were not that great, and my God, he would lock up with you and actually accidentally punch you in the nose. And then he'd lock up and say, how's the crowd? I can't see but to the third row. You knew you was going to get punched whether it was accident or not.
Yes. You got to love that. Now, you mentioned Memphis, obviously with Jerry Lawler and Jerry Jarrett. Did you like your time in Memphis? Because I think a lot of people always think of that territory as just a crazy territory. Some say it's great. Some say the payoffs weren't that great. But what were your thoughts of your time in Memphis?
Memphis was really good, I thought, too. I mean, there again, as we went in there as a three-man team, and with Norvell in there, you know, it really got over pretty strong. Most of the time in the ring, they wanted me and Dennis working in the ring and Norvell on the outside. But, Memphis Coliseum on Monday night, it was pretty electric. And I thought it was really great at the time. And some of the things went well, some of the things didn't. Like you said, the payoffs, we weren't really happy with some of that stuff. So we kind of, did our little deal there and then moved on.
4-time tag team champs, though. I mean, they definitely thought a lot about you guys and kind of gave you the ball, so to speak, for sure when you were there.
Right, yeah. We got the call from on that one. We got the call from Dusty Rhodes, me and Dennis did, and we decided we'd hook up with Paul Dangerously, and we got the call to go to wait a minute, I moved ahead of myself there. I'm sorry about it. We got the call from Paul Dangerously to get back together with me and Dennis, and then went to the AWA. Got over pretty strong there. We had a big following on ESPN, and won the AWA World titles. Got along pretty good up there, and we won those titles and did pretty good up in that area.
Yeah, I think a lot of people remember you and Dennis going to the AWA because he literally just left the NWA, and you really, if you kind of in between there, but he leaves there, you guys end up in the AWA and become champions, beating Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee. Yeah, there you go. So we got to a little bit of revenge there for the bad faces. Yes. Oh yeah, good point. That kind of turned out okay. Yeah. Because obviously Memphis and AWA had a great relationship for a while there. And then you guys end up losing the tag titles a few months later to a young, up-and-coming future great tag team, the Midnight Rockers, Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty. Right, and who knew Marty Jannetty was going to be as big as he was? Shawn Michaels, yes. I'm sorry, Michaels. Yep. What did you think at that point? Did you think, like, okay, these guys are, not they're green or anything, but, okay, these guys are good. We can do something with them. Did you kind of think you can mold them and have some good matches? Oh, yeah. They worked together with us pretty good, but that didn't really take on too long. And then I think after that we got the call from Dusty Rhodes, and
decided to bring us down here and to Atlanta with the big Channel 17 station and all out there. Got that call, and we flew down to Texas to meet Dusty Rhodes, and his famous voice that he used to say, he told all three of us sitting in his office, "This is going to be big, boys. This is going to be so big. I'm going to have y'all fighting through silk panties, making all kinds of money." And I said, "Okay, that's great." And then as I told my speech at the Hall of Fame deal, we were all excited about that, but we wasn't farting through silk panties. We didn't do that. Anyway, it turned out pretty good.
The Midnight Express versus the original Midnight Express, as Dusty calls you into WCW/NWA really at that time. It's going to be Bobby Eaton and Stan Lane against Dennis Condrey and you. And it's going to be that kind of, like I said, Midnights versus Midnights. Obviously, you guys have Paulie Dangerously, and they have Jim Cornette. What do you think didn't work there as far as Dusty, not that he didn't live up to it, but what happened there that, you weren't fighting through the silk panties?
I don't really know what the deal was with that. Everybody likes to speculate that they were changing bookers and people, and Dusty was fired or gone, and then Flair stepped in, Ric Flair, and then he got ticked with them. I think it was just a political office thing, and there was no denying from any parts, any of the fans that's listening to this, they know that I'm not, lying or absolutely being truthful, that those matches, especially the first one we did with them on Channel 17 where we attacked them and left Cornette laying bloody in the white jacket, I mean, that'll be forever in people's minds. One of the biggest angles in the history of wrestling, I think. We got the cover with Bill Apter on his magazine. And then we had a good run with them for about anywhere from 3 to 6 months. And then after that, they just kind of let it play down in the dirt and just run out. And then, they wanted to do the big deal where at the end with the Chicago Rumble, Chi-Town Rumble and all that. Mm-hmm. But anyway, the whole situation with that, I think, and it should have, in my mind, it should have went on. If they really wanted to make money and get everything over and sell out the houses, that one angle with us 6 guys could have really promoted that business.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like on paper and every scenario and everything you look at, that's just money. I mean, that's great. If you think about it, like Dennis was a part of the Midnight Express. You're really an original Midnight Express. He's really the Midnight Express, but he was teamed with Cornette and Eaton for a while, and then he leaves, and then Lane comes in, and then you guys come back kind of for revenge and everything else, and beat the shit out of Cornette, which is, pardon my French there, but beat the crap out of Cornette, and it sets up something that could have been huge. It's one of those things, like you said, was it the bookers? Was it politics? Was Dusty kind of blowing smoke? It's so many different thoughts because that just seemed like had money written all over it.
Well, absolutely. And what's better in your eyes is they were handed a real situation to, make money with, and they dropped the ball. I mean, how could you be handed that kind of angle that was real with the names, with the 6 good workers? I mean, 2 of the greatest talkers in the business, 4 good workers, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And
yes.
You were handed an angle that would made you money for a year or 2. I mean, if you just kept on going, that would have just kept on making you money. So, but I just think they dropped the ball on it, and I don't know what to say about that.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is that with Dennis leaving again, I mean, you kind of have the feud through like Starrcade 88 and all this other stuff going on, but then Dennis really ends up leaving WCW again, and you end up teaming with Jack Victory in basically the Loser Leaves Town match. So it's like, all right, that doesn't really scream Midnight Express versus Midnight Express, right? With Dennis leaving, it kind of screws it up too.
Right, and there's no way that I would want to say anything derogatory toward any of my partners that helped me make money or make it in my career, but there's only one thing, and I never question him or whatever, but I just wished possibly that when it was done this time, See, when we showed up in Chicago, we didn't have any idea that Dennis was not going to be there, and we were going to go ahead and go through with the whole scenario, number one, to make the money on the pay-per-view, number two, to see what they were going to do afterwards, if they were going to do anything. But we were never told, and we got there, and then all of a sudden it was, are you still going to do it? But, I played this back in my mind over and over and over again. If I had been told by Dennis, I probably wouldn't have went myself either. I would have just, stood out and said, okay, how y'all going to do midnight against midnight, loser leave town when Dennis and Randy's not there?
Right. Would be impossible. Yep.
Figure that out. I came up with a few scenarios, and then I said, okay, well, this is business, so I'm just going to do business, get my money, go home, and do business instead of, doing something that was derogatory toward the team. I didn't want to do that, but I kind of wished I would have known. I would have played it out a little bit different. But the whole scenario, is like I didn't know till I got there, and then it was too late. But, I would have done a couple of things. I talked to a few of my really good, close friends that's been in the business for years and years, and they've done sometimes in the wrestling business, I'm sure people know by now on some of the stuff, is there's a lot of mind games being played in politics, as we call it, back in the background. Basically, I hated that kind of stuff. I always enjoyed and loved being out there in front of the crowd, getting the crowd excited, being able to stand the crowd up and make them get excited and hate me and jump and this and that and sit them back down when I wanted to. I mean, that was a thrill to me, and I really enjoyed that. I did not enjoy the politics of wrestling and the backstabbing and that kind of stuff that was in it. So I basically never got into that, I just kind of went out there and performed and worked for the crowd and that sort of thing. And, it kind of came down to that in the end of my career with that Chi-Town Rumble thing there. And, a lot of people can say, oh, he did this or he did that, and he just wound up being a job guy or whatever. But, that's whatever their opinion may be. But as I'm telling you now, I didn't get into the politics, so I just did the business and I went on. And there was, as I was fixing to say, I had a couple of good friends that I asked them before I went into that match, and I said, listen, Abdullah the Butcher was one of them. Mr. Rousey number 2 was one of them, and I said, what should I do? So they said, well, you can either go out there, do the deal, and I come up with 2 or 3 scenarios. At first I was going to go out there, since this was a live pay-per-view, you cannot script or set up or change a live pay-per-view. So I was just going to take my bags out there and walk around in front of the ring and let the people see you, and then go back, get in the dressing room, and leave. If it's a loser leaves town, you're losing, and you got no future anyway. So just walk out and leave, but let them know that you're ticked and you're gone.
It's very interesting, that show. I mean, when Dennis doesn't show up and Jack Victory replaces you, so Chi-Town Rumble 89 is really kind of the end of the quote-unquote original Midnight Express, really, just by Dennis leaving, and then Jack Victory just kind of obviously comes out and does the match, and it kind of isn't Midnight versus Midnight. I mean, it just isn't. It really ended before the show started, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. Like I said, we were kind of left hanging on that one, but
yeah.
Let's move on away from that.
Yeah. You ended up staying for a few months, actually. I mean, a little bit of a tag team with Ranger Ross. You're wrestling Rick Steiner. Is that something where you still had the contract and you're just kind of going through and working out the rest of your contract? Actually, it was. Yes, it was. And like I said, I enjoyed more performing in front of the fans and being in the ring and, traveling around and all that stuff. And then I think afterwards I went ahead and filled out my contract, and then I went straight to Japan there for about 6 weeks with Abdullah and all, and we did a pretty good run over there. So it turned out pretty good. Yeah, you had quite a run in All Japan Pro Wrestling for Giant Baba. So that's one of those things where Abdullah kind of gets you over there and he gets you brought in? Yeah, I've been knowing him for years and years, and we've probably been over there probably 5-6 times now. And as a matter of fact, he's still talking to this day, wanting to go back over there and do autograph stuff. And I'm like, yeah,
my 16, 18 hours flying to Japan is about over.
Yeah, right. Isn't that gonna kind of not be good for the body? Yeah, that stinks. That flight is terrible. And obviously, I mean, Abdullah doesn't look like he's in great physical shape too. So I don't know if he's going to be comfortable making that flight.
Right. Yeah, he's got some bad hips too, and he's trying to make it, but he's still hanging in there.
Did you like that Japanese style, the strong style? They're a little bit more stiff. They're a little bit more snug. Do you like that style?
Oh yeah, I really do. I mean, I like to pride myself as always being a snug, tight worker, and I always told the guys, as people know now with the New York stuff, it's like, okay, if you're going to walk out there like Vince McMahon and say this is entertainment now and we're really not doing this for real, then to me, what's the use, But back in our day, it's like, if I told the guys, if you hit me solid, because if you don't, I'm going to hit you back really, really solid. Just do not hit me from the nose to the mouth to the face. Anywhere else, you better lay them in.
Yes. Now, as far as working with some of those guys over there, everyone always says that during that time period, like when you were there, the early 90s, All Japan Wrestling, they had so much talent go in there, so much amazing wrestlers. What did you think about guys like Kenta Kobashi, who you wrestled several times, and Misawa and Kawada, and those guys that are kind of revered as some of the greatest workers?
Oh, yeah, I thought they were awesome, man. They train over there really, really hard. And the Kobashi, they put me with him probably for 2 or 3 weeks straight when I got in there. And we gelled pretty good and had some pretty good matches. There was a little story I was going to tell you there right quick that I forgot when I first went in there for the last time, about in 91. Was the guys were pretty stiff with me too, and when you first go in there, they'll test you a little bit. The Japanese are known for that. They will test you. So I went to my buddy Abby and I said, Abby, they're hurting me, man. They're hitting me. They're punching me in the face. And he says, Randy, hit them back. So I started hitting them back, and they started hollering, Itai, Itai, which means hurt in Japan. And I'm like, okay, you loosen up a little bit, I'll loosen up a little bit. That's kind of the way it works over there.
Yeah, right. I mean, they can't they like to kind of dish it out, but if you dish it back, it's kind of fair, right? I mean, they're not going to cry. I mean, it's just going to be kind of tough and the way it is, right?
Right, yeah. And they train really hard over there, and they would test you and they would dish it out. So you got to be strong and tough when you go in there, especially for 5-6 weeks at a time.
Do you like how they basically treat it as a sport over there, and the media kind of covers it as a sport? Do you respect that?
I really do. And something that's ironic that we were talking about here pretty recently since this Corona junk is that they're having, New York and AEW and all that, they're still having some matches, but they have no fans out there. Well, if you've never been to Japan, it's sort of like that. You may have 2,000 people in the crowd, but you'll get in the ring and you'll do all kinds of, move and run and jump and hitting the ropes and all that, and they won't make a noise. Sometimes in some of the matches, they won't make any noise till the end of the match, and then they'll clap. It used to be like there was nobody out there. So I'm like, oh my God. And there's people, I've told people before, I said, with the crowd out there, those bumps don't hurt quite as bad. But, with no crowd, I don't know how these guys are doing that now.
Yeah, it's got to be tough, right? And you guys, of your era, you're so used to kind of having the crowd not only fuel you guys, but like there could be a part of the comeback. They're a part of the way you guys are working the match, right?
Right, yeah. The crowd is, I always said if you got a tag match, there's 5 guys in the ring, including the referee, and then you probably got another 1,000 out in the crowd helping you make that match. And like I said, a lot of people have asked me before, oh my God, don't they hurt your body, this and that? Well, it don't hurt your body at the time because the adrenaline is flowing and the crowd is pumping. And, it may hurt when you get out and you go home and you lay down, but at the time it don't, because that crowd is what's fueling you, just like you said.
Now, as far as some of the partners, I just wanted to bring up, because this is some pretty good tag partners you've had over there. You know, they'll work you in some six-mans. You'll be with Furnace and LaFon, but I was thinking about teaming up with a guy like Joel Deaton, who's kind of an underrated legend that's definitely was a big-time success in All Japan Wrestling.
Absolutely, yes. Joel was a great worker. He's a great guy, great friend, and I don't know if anybody knows it, but bless his heart, he just had a stroke probably about a year ago, and he's trying to make a comeback right now. He's in therapy and all that, and my prayers go out to him, and hope everything comes out okay, because he is one heck of a guy, and he was one hell of a worker.
No doubt about it. Yeah, hopefully he's on the the path to getting better, and hopefully he feels better very soon. Just thinking about some of the other guys besides Joel and McCann Express and all these other great guys are over there. Dr. Death, Steve Williams, Terry Gordy. I mean, they were just so much talent was in All Japan when you were there. I mean, just crazy.
Oh yeah, great. I know, as you mentioned, Dr. Death, and there's a couple right there, and Terry Gordy. Those Japanese used to run from them because they would. There's an old saying that if all of the wrestlers from the back dressing room are standing out watching the match, you know that somebody's getting beat up. So every time Steve Williams and Terry Gordy would go in the ring, we'd have to go out there and watch, because it's like, okay. But here's a funny story. I'll tell you this one, and about Japan and Joel Deaton is funny. He even tells me to this day. Giant Baba, I think we was in the Budokan. We were in there for, I don't know, probably 10, 15 times while I was over there. And there was a couple guys that was just, getting over pretty strong. And then I was kind of new when I first went in over there. And I'm like, okay, I got to do something. I'm just coming off the Midnight Express thing. I had the Midnight Express jacket on and had one made with a fixture airbrushed like a bullet train, and then had the Midnight Express on the train deal, So I'm like, well, I got to do something, something really powerful and strong when I go out to this freaking ring. So I come up with this thing. I went to a magic shop and got this flash paper, So I had it underneath that jacket, and as I come out to the ring, probably about 60,000 Japanese out there, and I started shooting fire out of the end of my jacket in my hands. I'll never forget it. I went ahead and had my match, and I came back to the ring, and Bob, the first time he actually ever talked to me, he goes, Randy Rowe, come here. You can do fire. Fire marshal, run us out of building. No fire. You burn down building. And I'm like, oh my God. And Joel's like, every time he talks to me or sees me like on Facebook or something, he'll go, yeah, I remember the night Baba told Randy not to do no more fire.
That's great though. I mean, it's such an innovative kind of cool thing to do.
Oh yeah, I was like, I got to come up with something. So, set yourself off. You always got to have some kind of little song. Yeah,
that's true. You got to be different. Was Joel kind of your traveling buddy? Like, who's traveling with you in Japan? Because you think there might be a little bit of a culture shock. I know you've obviously been there a few times, but is there a little bit of a culture shock? Are the Gaijins, the Americans, the guys that speak English, are they all kind of hanging out together, driving together? Is Joel your kind of riding partner?
Yeah, basically him and Abdullah were. They basically put us on one bus, and then they put the Japanese wrestlers on another bus, and then we used to travel around the country over there. And I thought this is another little funny scenario, is some of the Japanese guys would ride on our bus sometimes, and they would holler at me and like, Randy Rose, when I first went over there, I learned some of the Japanese, because back in the late 80s and 90s, I don't know if people remember this, but, the subways in Tokyo, and they would keep us mostly out of Tokyo, but the subways in Tokyo didn't have American and English writing on it. It had just Japanese. So I studied a little bit and learned how to read, to get on the I would get on the subway from the town that we were in, ride back down to Tokyo, which was one of the only places you could get American food and Kentucky Fried Chicken and McDonald's and all that stuff. So I'd get on that subway and ride down, get off to Tokyo, get my food, get my groceries and all that stuff, come back. And by the time we hit the bus the next day, all the guys would be going, okay, because this bus would stop probably only 3 or 4 times, and the only place it would stop would be like the noodle places. So you'd spend $18 to $20 Japanese to get nothing but noodles. And here I am sitting in the back of the bus eating my cookies and my apples and my McDonald's and all that, and they're like, oh, Randy Rhodes, you're cheaper, boy. You eat the groceries out of bag. And I go, okay. So by the time 2 or 3 of those trips, they're already got to where they're tired of them noodles, and they come to me going, oh, okay, can we get apple and orange and cookies? And I go, no, you call me cheaper, boy. They were begging me for food after a while.
That is great, though, that they kind of have like a good, funny camaraderie with you guys.
Yeah, pretty good. And then they would.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, you go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. What I was going to say is that then someone would go, oh, no, you Abdullah's boy. You Joel Deaton's boy. And I go, hey, that's all right. Somebody help me get a trip over here and make 20, 30 grand. I'll be anybody's boy. It don't matter.
Good point. As far as like them knowing English and stuff, like being able to communicate in matches, I'm always like very curious to that. Do they know English? Do you guys know Japanese? Is there just an unwritten, unspoken language of professional wrestling that everybody just kind of can understand?
Well, back then, I guess that is a good way to put it. Back then, there kind of was, It's just we kind of knew basically what the other guy was going to do before we'd done it. They knew very little English, a little bit here and there, but like you were just saying, this kind of an unwritten rule of what's going to do next. And I used to really cherish that because, so much is going on now with the wrestling that I don't agree with, and I really never agree. And I'm not really talking down about it. I know it's entertainment, and I don't agree with Vince McMahon coming in and telling all of that because, number one, a great magician, David Copperfield, never went and told his audience how he done his tricks, correct?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay. Well, we never told anybody that we weren't really punching you out or running around and doing this and that. But, like I said, 80% of my stuff was real, and then especially in Japan. And so I never really agreed with that, and I don't agree with it to this day. But what your question basically is could we gel in the ring without talking? Yes, we could. And we never had to sit down like they're doing today and script out every match and every interview. We did it all on our own and in other words, play it by ear.
Do you watch current wrestling? Do you really follow it or not interested in the current product?
I'm not really interested too much in the WWE just for that reason, because I have a lot of guys that were my friends, still my friends, and our bodies are beaten up because of it, and we protected our business back then, and I really don't appreciate, somebody coming in and doing that to our business is what they've done in order to become a triple billionaire or whatever. And there's so many guys that are right now that are beaten down, that's lost their lives, that travel all over the world, their bodies are torn up, and, I don't agree with it. I don't watch it a lot. Sometimes I'll watch the AEW stuff, which is pretty good. I agree with some of that. And I don't know. It's just it's a different game nowadays to me. And I really not. I watch to see what they're going to do, and see if I agree with that or look at it and go, what kind of crazy stuff they're going to do this time. So, but there's still a lot of good, and I'm not taking away from that at any means, that there's a lot of great athletes that are in it today and all, but it just don't have the gel to me if you got something out there that you're scripting and, you're going out and going, okay, well, this and that. And because even when we done interviews back then, we would go out there and just play it by ear. It came off of the brain, and you either got over, from your intellect and your gimmick that you put out there, not because some Hollywood scriptwriter was telling you what to say.
They seem to have a lack of originality, I guess you could say, a lack of creativeness. A lot of the promos are scripted. They're not allowed to kind of be their own character. Is that kind of totally against what pro wrestling should be? I mean, shouldn't these guys kind of not be reading off a script and sound more real?
Absolutely. I mean, that's kind of an oxymoron, is it? Now that everybody's, the Vince McMahon's always went around and said it's entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
But there again, and I'm not in any sense bragging anymore, but back when we did it, it was possibly 80% real because we really knew how to do the holds. We really knew how to do the landings. We knew how to do the talking. Everything it wasn't scripted out behind the scene in the back dressing room. It was played out in the ring, and either it worked or it didn't.
I feel like there's something in wrestling that needs to go back to old school. Not necessarily everything needs to change, but there's something that really worked then that they changed for no reason. You know what I mean? Like it didn't need to change, or it was working, and you know what I mean? It's just one of those things that wrestling evolved, but not necessarily for the better.
Right, absolutely. I agree with that. I'll go back to the Hall of Fame thing. Is some of the guys that went in there with me this in 2019 was Ronnie Garvin, one of the toughest, meanest workers out of North Carolina and all that too. And let's see, Abdullah was there. They actually put Owen Hart in there with us and a couple others too. So I thought that was pretty cool. You're talking old school, so there's some of your really good old school actual wrestlers.
Yes, love Ronnie Garvin. One of the, like you said, legit tough guys. Great worker, great wrestler, and I had the opportunity to work with him. I'd say about maybe 2 years ago, was it? Harley Race was next to us. He was wheelchair bound at this point, and I said, Ronnie, you're known as one of the toughest wrestlers of all time. And I go, so is he? And he looks at Harley. He goes, oh man, my buddy Harley over there. Yeah. I said, do you think you could take him? Like, who's tougher? and he looks at him. He goes, well, right now maybe me because he's in the wheelchair, but I'm not sure. So it was just one of those funny things where he is tough, but he's very humble and very respectful too.
Yes. Harley Race was one of the toughest in the business. People don't know a lot about him, but he was, and Ronnie Garvin always was. And going back to some of the things that I believe in, and just the way I'm looking at it today, as it was, and I still always say this, and people probably say I'm ancient or old school or whatever, but that's all right with me because that's the way I learned. I learned how to wrestle in the ring before I learned how to be a showman. And the marquee will always say wrestler, wrestling. It won't say in my book entertainment.
Yes, good point. Now, where did you actually learn to wrestle? I know you probably debuted somewhere around 74-ish. Who was your trainer? How did you kind of break in?
I trained probably started breaking in around 76, 77. I trained with an old Mexican wrestler out of Mexico, Al Velasquez. Nobody probably ever knows who he was, but he was tough. I mean, he could really, really show you some different holds. As I said, I learned the holds first. Then I learned, the flip-flops and flies. I used to train daily with the old Samoans. I don't know if you remember them, Alpha and Sika.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yep. And they would put you through the grinder. We would start off every morning with about probably calisthenics, weightlifting. Then we would do about an hour on the mat, and then we would do handball. I mean, it was a 3 or 4 hour a day situation, and they put me through the grinder. And I trained with a lot of different guys that just, helped me learn, the real art of wrestling.
And I feel like that is something that is missing for sure. The actual, the art of wrestling, if not all high spots and false finishes, I mean, there's an art to it, and they definitely are missing that aspect. I feel like there's something missing there. I know I said it before, but there's something missing that I wish they would kind of go back to and from old school wrestling. You know what I mean? Like that's something that they definitely should look to.
I do know exactly what you mean, but I don't know if it'll be able to go back. It's probably gone too far the other way. But let me ask you this question: we'll see if you are an old school fan or wrestler, who had better actual wrestling matches, have you ever stood or watched tapes of Jack Briscoe and Dory Funk?
Mm-hmm. Yep. They got him on VHS tape and DVD. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh my God, I could sit and watch them for hours. And then there's stuff like Wrestling 2 and even Ric Flair. I mean, he, you can talk to him, and he was a consummate wrestler. I mean, before he became a showman and an entertainer. But I mean, there you go again. You can call me old school or whatever, but that's just the way I was brought up and the way I was trained, and that's the way I usually tried to work. I would throw a little pizzazz in there, with the long blonde hair and the strutting and all that crap. But when it came down to it, I liked the analogy of locking up and switching holes and making a wrestling match.
And I love the old Briscoe Funk that you mentioned that. Go back and watch them. I mean, they're still, people are like, old school wrestling may be boring. No, go watch Funk and Briscoe. Not boring at all. They're awesome technical wrestlers, and they are just, grinding, but it's real, and they really look like they're in a fight, but it's just great athletic competition. It's great wrestling. I love especially Jack Briscoe. He's just unbelievable. Dory Funk is amazing too, but I love watching some old Jack Briscoe. Right,
and then you mentioned Harley Race. He was one of the best ones too. Bob Orton Jr., that's another one that helped train me. Ricky Gibson. Those guys, put them in the ring and you were going to see wrestling.
As far as you and kind of, breaking in and working through, do you have some kind of like favorite territories that you work? Because you literally, I mean, if you think about it, Georgia, and you mentioned Memphis before, and AWA, obviously WCW, and we didn't really even mention Florida. You went down to Championship Wrestling Florida. Houston Wrestling with Paul Bosch, Big Time Wrestling with Fritz, a few tours in Japan, IWE and All Japan. Do you have kind of like a favorite place or a favorite territory?
I think my favorite was probably Southeastern with the Ron Fuller organization. I was treated well. I was able to, instead of, being the political situation that some of it that I discussed earlier, is he would let his guys have a chance to move up the card. And there's not very many territories back then. Well, there's none now, which really ticks me off there again.
Yep.
But back then, there wasn't many territories that you could go and stay longer than a year or so. Well, I wound up staying at least 4 or 5 years in Pensacola without having to leave, and it was an awesome place to live. It was great. You made good money, and you got to work and really, really learn your craft.
I feel like a lot of the wrestlers that I speak to love Southeastern. They love Pensacola. They love the beaches. They love the woman. They love the driving because it wasn't too far, and they love the payoffs.
Yep, everything was pretty good down there.
Ron Fuller ran a good ship, I guess. Good territory.
Yeah, he was a very, very good businessman, not just for the wrestling. I don't know if anybody knows it or you know it, but he wound up after that owning a hockey team,
Yep.
A couple other things too. And every time I see him, he's always got his hand in something. He's got irons in the fire.
Right. That's for sure. And as far as you and kind of retiring, and I guess it was somewhere around 92-ish, you kind of stopped, and I know come back, and you and Dennis teamed for a little bit in the 2000s, did a little original Midnight Express stuff. But why did you end up kind of leaving the business when you did in around the 92 era?
I think I had I don't know if it's back then or not, I started having some back problems, and I actually wound up having hip replacement here in the last 5-6 years. The body basically was telling me it's time to quit.
I understand that. Yeah, it makes sense. And how are you feeling now? I mean, the new hip and everything, you feeling good? You're mobile?
Doing pretty good. Yeah, not bad. I like to tell the wife every day that she was really never a big wrestling fan, but and the people don't realize even today. Like I said, I still respect those guys in the ring, even if they're Vince McMahon saying, "Oh, it's all entertainment." Well, those guys are still putting their body on the line. They're still taking bumps. on a freaking piece of plywood with tin and a little bit of foam and a mat over the top of it, and it beats your body up no matter what you do or what anybody thinks. You know, it's not fun and games, and you get into that ring and you throw your body around like that 350 days out of the year for 10, 15 years. Oh, yeah, it's going to take a toll.
Now, as we hit the wind-down button, head towards the finish line, do you have some favorite matches or maybe some favorite opponents through the years? Because, I mean, we talked about working in Southeastern and obviously teaming up with Dennis Condrey, you know, Austin tag team, throw in a little Norvell Austin, Midnight Express. Do you have some favorite matches and maybe some favorite opponents through the years?
Well, yeah, like I was saying earlier, Bob Orton Jr., Ricky Gibson, I wrestled them. Mr. Wrestling, too. I had his last match when he left Atlanta, moving back to Hawaii, was his very last match in Georgia. That was a pretty one. I got it on tape. Strictly Wrestling. There was quite a few guys that I really enjoyed. Harley Race. I loved working with Harley Race. There's so many of them. It's just hard to pick out one of the best ones.
And would you say Dennis is the favorite tag team partner that you had? Because you had quite a few.
I would say, yeah, me and Dennis gelled better than just about anybody.
Dennis was always great. I mean, he's a great wrestler anyway, but always great in tag teams. Something about it. He just, with you, he gelled. With Bobby Eaton, he gelled. He was always a great tag wrestler.
Right, yeah.
Now, as far as you and the business, do you have any regrets in wrestling? Is there anything that you kind of left on the table, or any thoughts of you wish you did this or wish you did that?
Well, I don't know how this might sound, but I wished I had came out of the Midnight Express thing and went and got the name trademarked.
Right.
So anyway, but that's one thing. I mean, I could have done that, but other than that, no, I enjoyed it quite a bit. And as I tell a lot of people who ask me why I've done it, I got to see the world on the promoter's cash, you know. Otherwise, if I hadn't have done that, I'd probably been staying at home working for my dad in a construction company, and that's what I'd have been doing the rest of my life. But I got to travel to Australia, Japan a few times, New Zealand, Korea, Saipan was wrestling. I wrestled Bam Bam Bigelow in Saipan.
Whoa, nice.
Saipan, still got the T-shirt. And I got to see the world and the country, all of the U.S. states, and just about. And it was a very good experience, you know.
And I was telling you before, I'm from Asbury Park, the home. Everyone always asks, the home of Bam Bam Bigelow. So nice little tie-in there. Very cool.
There you go. There you go. Oh, he was a heck of a worker. Bless his heart.
Yeah, for a big guy, everyone always says like he was easy, nimble, awesome to work with, one of the best workers.
Yeah, very much. Paul Orndorff, guys like that. There were some good workers that I worked with.
Now, as far as you and when, like, let's say the chapter's closed, and even for like a Hall of Fame scenario, when people are looking at Randy Rose and they're just looking at your career, looking back, what's like the lasting legacy, or what's the stamp that you would say you leave behind in your wrestling career?
Well, I don't know, and I didn't mention this earlier. And there again, I'm not the bragging type, but I will tell you some of the things. I wound up, and I don't know if people know this about what I'd done after some of my career, was I got into a situation with the MDA, Muscular Dystrophy Kids, and Jerry Lewis. Got to meet Jerry Lewis, as a matter of fact. And I went to a couple of camps in the state of Georgia. And then I got with Joe Pedicino on Channel 36 and Bonnie Brookstone and all that stuff. And I started doing some different shows to collect money for the telethon. I did the telethon for actually probably 10, 15 years and did that with wrestling matches around Georgia. And then I wound up taking about 10 guys every summer at summer camp to entertain and put on matches for the kids at the summer camp, the MDA camp. And there's nothing more exciting. You know, I've been in arenas with 20,000 people here and there, but there was nothing more exciting to have us with about 80 to 60 kids in wheelchairs and put them on a wrestling match and have them screaming and hollering. And it was just an honor. And as a matter of fact, I wound up doing that for 20 years for them. And I just thought that was pretty cool at the end of my career there.
That is awesome. That definitely didn't know that. Very, very cool. And that's even something better than being a wrestler and doing that. I mean, giving back, and that's unbelievable. Right.
You didn't know that one, huh?
No, I didn't realize that. That's very cool.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, the kids got together and gave me a plaque for it. It's pretty cool, the last thing. And like I said, you can go all around the world and all that, but when you do something like that and you see the excitement in those kids' eyes, sitting in a wheelchair, knowing that they'll never walk, but they are very excited when they do that. But every summer for that probably 15, 18 years, we put on a show for them, and it was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. Totally a career benchmark. That's awesome.
I would have guys bring the ring for free. I'd have 10 or 15 guys come out and work for free, and they loved it as much as I did. So just to see the excitement in the kids' eyes.
Yes, very meaningful and very powerful. I love that. Didn't realize that. That's really, really cool. Now, as far as plugs and maybe bookings or social media, do you have stuff like out there? I mean, are you out there kind of promoting yourself, or you're kind of quiet as far as social media and plugs and things like that?
No, not really. I don't really promote myself that much anymore as far as that goes. I have my own business out of Atlanta, and I do some different car shows around the country, like, Daytona, Pigeon Forge, and Charlotte and stuff like that. But I don't really promote the wrestling much anymore. I do have some people call me once in a while and want to book me for that and all. And like I said, when they done that for the Charlotte deal, the gathering, I thought that was pretty phenomenal, and I really respect Marty up there, and I appreciated that too. And then the Hall of Fame thing, but no, they're not knocking on my door every day for the wrestling, but that's okay. I've done my stint, and I enjoyed it, and I still love it, and I don't mind getting out there signing autographs at any time. So that's fine, but I don't promote it that much.
All right, awesome stuff. Awesome to kind of get a very rare interview with Randy Rosa, the original Midnight Express. So Randy, thank you so much. Awesome to have you on. I really appreciate it all the time.
Thank you, buddy. It's a pleasure talking to you. And as you just said 2 or 3 times, original, when you go to Kentucky Fried Chicken, you always get the original.
Right. Awesome stuff. So, Randy, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, buddy.